Kia ora and welcome to this week's episode of School Briefs. This week we've got a few things top of mind. We of course had the Waitangi Tribunal hearing final day at the beginning of the week. We were going to dip into an announcement we heard about ERO and then really interesting opportunity to talk about what feels like the beginning of our opposition parties starting to speak up a bit more about education. So there's certainly some interesting stuff to talk about this week. But Liam, first up, that tribunal hearing, a firecracker of a final day. I don't know about you. I dipped in and out throughout the day when I had opportunity to and listened to quite a bit of the hearing here and there, and particularly the close at the end of the day. What were your takeaways from it?
Yeah, can I double check that I understood what happened correctly? That the tribunal ended up getting extended because it got announced that the Minister of Justice had been working on that idea of, bigger the thought, watering down treaty provisions even further.
Yeah, and across other sectors. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely shocking. I mean, we spoke with Richard Manning, one of the submitters, earlier in the week around kind of his take and his submission. But what I took from that is that, like, at each point from this government that we think things have kind of come to an end, and that surely they're just going to want to kind of
cement
what they're currently doing.
Yeah.
They kind of want to go a little bit deeper because the new wording is all around. You have to acknowledge that you've considered it, and so I don't even know how you could get that any weaker. And it's going to have huge ramifications for education in the same way that we have seen before, because schools are now going to be in a point where te tiriti is an optional thing, kind of nice to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, all I could think of, particularly when I was listening to some of that sort of final closing statements, is that here we were thinking that the Treaty Principles Bill had been voted down and we had moved past that. And of course, National weren't going to support that. And it just was so loud and clear that this isn't a coalition partner move. This is our minister directly ensuring that the te tiriti is removed from Section 127 and that we have completely repositioned things like our histories and social studies, social science, social studies curriculum, removed references to Māori and Pacifica in our English curriculum. Like, it's so happening in broad daylight, and I can't believe that we're not actually, absolutely horrified by this because of what it represents in terms of what we're willing to accept. This is, as you say, this is not just happening in education. We've had the Minister of Justice, addressed in that tribunal hearing as well, because we were actually seeing evidence of te tiriti and references to the Treaty of Waitangi being either watered down or removed across a whole lot of areas. And it's really worrying.
And I think there's a real appetite to be able to water this down in spaces like the RMA, where you do see property developers getting really frustrated with the idea that they have to go and engage with iwi and hapu. And so kind of true to form around what you would expect from a kind of right-wing government, everything is about kind of dollars and cents and giving the market the space it needs to be able to go and do its things. And this is where I just kind of hope, and it could be that I hang out in education circles, that they have just kind of really misread where schools are up to in this point.
I don't know about you. I think people were loving localised curriculum. They were loving their localised curriculum. They were loving the 2023 Te Mataiaho and that work that Dr. Wainata had led. And it just feels like there's been absolute U-turn and nobody's asked for it. Well, a very small discrete group could maybe ask for it.
And where I'm from, learning the story around how Rangitane actually gifted the land that went on to become Palmerston North. And so we've had this really long-term cooperative relationship with our iwi, where we're from. And I mean, those are the stories that kind of make you feel really nice and kind of understand yourself because you kind of know the history of the kind of whenua in which you're
Yeah.
occupying. And my sense is that there's a real fear that we're going to kind of lose some of those real green shoots that were starting to come through
Oh,
over the first couple of
absolutely.
years.
Yeah, yeah, and when we hopefully in the next few days we'll be able to share our interview with Richard Manning. My goodness, that was hugely insightful in terms of the people who have influenced the changes around the histories and social science curriculum, and just the sheer level of the U-turn and diminishing that we've seen. And I don't know if our listeners have all been keeping up with Bevan Holloway's pieces. He's an incredible. I'm sorry, but Bevan's an investigative journalist. I mean, his work is sort of like Watergate, digging through files on files on files, and he is shedding light on some incredibly worrying passions of just disregard for democratic systems and disregard for policy and safeguards that exist to ensure that the right people are involved in creating policy and legal things like our curriculum document. Those rules and regulations about who can do what and the processes that they should follow. They're there to safeguard, aren't they? And again, I'm blown away that we haven't seen more journalists pick up on this stuff and actually expose and, because so much of it is now laid bare. So, yeah, it's a watch this space. And I'm really looking forward to sharing what we hope is a bit of a series of some conversations with those people who presented at the Waitangi Tribunal hearing in the coming week or so as well. Exciting
Yeah,
stuff ahead.
that's right. Now, what's been going on at ERO?
So we got the notice. We got a heads up. I think it was maybe beginning of this week, or end of the last week. We got a notice from acting CEO Ruth Shinoda to let us know that she is taking off and has been seconded by none other than Ofsted and the equivalent partner in Australia. And Mike, again, how are we not more concerned about this? There's a whole lot of us that are deeply concerned with the recent changes and a whole lot of people feeling like it's just a copy and paste of a UK system that has done incredible amounts of damage. And now we have an acting CEO proudly declaring that they're off to go be seconded by Ofsted. I don't know about you, but I'm really concerned.
Yeah, so is the level of like personal communication new lately? Like, I mean, have we always
Yeah.
been given kind of career updates from senior leaders
Yeah.
in the education sector?
I don't know. I think I wonder. I know that Ruth Shinoda works closely with our minister, and our minister does like sending direct emails and likes direct reels and those sort of things. And I can't help feeling that there's been a bit of a shift in style of communication that we're getting. So, you know, we're having this information shared with us for a reason, and it's
Yeah,
a really clear communication about the direction of travel that we're heading to. And I don't know. I mean, I'm really I mean, we've talked in the past about the damage of Ofsted. We've talked about the fact that, so damning, it's been linked to a suicide of a UK principal. It's been seen as doing incredible amounts of damage reputationally, in terms of the style
yeah,
of, checking and inspection of schools and the way that they're sort of so publicly sort of ranked or
yeah.
made to become an academy or, all those sort of things. And, it absolutely terrifies me that they seem to be proud of that connection. They're not trying to downplay the connection to Ofsted and the equivalent party in Australia. They seem to be celebrating it and
Yeah, that's
giving
right.
us career updates.
Yeah. And I mean, the roadmap has been laid out for quite a while, but now they're
Mm,
kind of leaning into it. It's like the curtain's been pulled back,
yeah,
and the fact that they're willing to kind of publicly say that they're sending off Ruth on this kind of year-long secondment does suggest that they kind of regard her as a kind of long-term future.
yeah,
Uh, but just this kind of like simplistic view of the world where you can just go and copy what's going on in one education system and bring it to the other. One of my kind of big frustrations, because it plays out in the curriculum space as well, is that is that they've got the simplistic view around just dumping something in, rushing through the implementation.
Yeah.
And none of these people are personally going to be here 5 to 10 years down the track when educators who are going to be there are going, gosh, I can't believe we've gone and done all that. There's going to be a new kind of minister of education coming in talking about how the last models failed and that we need to move to this new one with their kind of pet toys. And it's
Yeah.
just this frustration around, and you hear it from educators all the time around, we actually need to move away from having politicians so directly involved with the direction of education policy. And I know it's
Yeah.
nuanced than that. But actually, the Irish have got a really good model where they have all of this kind of education policy goes through quite a long-term discussion and funnel, and so that people know 5 or 10 years
It
in front
sits outside the election
need to know it.
cycles. Yeah.
That's right. And you talk to educators, and that's such an obvious idea, but it just seems to be lost
Yeah.
on the kind of current.
Oh, and it's really worrying that it is so clearly an election ticket, an election issue for National. You can see it in the fact that half of the National MPs seem to be spouting the same sort of spin and data around education. We've got Emma Chatterton, who's now standing in Judith Collins' seat, a safe national seat in Papakura. She is, of course, people may not have realised, but Emma has been the long-time senior education advisor for the minister. So while she stood for as a member of parliament at the last election, when she wasn't successful, she went into the role alongside the minister and her role as a senior education advisor. And now we have her standing in the Papakura seat, and half her post seems to be about as if she was also the Minister of Education. And we've seen it from MPs that seem to have nothing to do with education, doing those same reels, like they've been handed a script that they have to keep reading out. So it's interesting times. And it's interesting that we're not seeing any sort of recognition of the data and the evidence that's coming out of places like the UK about the fact that those interventions didn't work in the way they wanted to anyway. Like it was actually at the Waitangi Tribunal hearing, they talked to the fact that there's very clear evidence that nothing about the structured literacy approach and that really prescribed process didn't close the equity gap at all, didn't close that divide whatsoever. So the fact that we keep barreling on as if it's some great sort of, silver bullet and answer. But yeah, interesting times. And, and talking of MP messaging, hasn't it been interesting the last week to feel like we're starting to hear the return of some, stronger opposition voice as well?
Yeah, that's right. The
Mm.
sleepy giant has awoken. There's obviously a new education spokesperson for Labour, and she's gone and put out a Substack, but also did a kind of detailed interview with Newsroom.
Yeah.
And the
And it does
headline,
sound like it's the beginning of a soft launch of some policy and position statements, doesn't it?
yeah, well, the headline was around Labour vows to bring Te Tiriti back into education, which, I mean, good, great, and I'm keen to
Yeah.
talk about that. But also, I'm not quite sure the headline kind of captured some of the other areas that Ginny Anderson had spoken about. And
Yeah.
it did kind of just give me this kind of dread that, fingers crossed, we don't get into this election where people are just trying to make it about Te Tiriti.
Yeah.
Because in actual fact, the stuff going on in education is certainly a lot broader
Much broader.
than that.
Yeah.
But I wondered if I could put some of Ginny's main points to you, and
Yep.
you maybe give us a sense around whether or not you think they kind of hit the mark and where they kind of fall over.
Yep.
Yep,
Absolutely.
cool. So the first one was, I guess, criticism of this whole knowledge-rich curriculum idea, as if it's this kind of silver bullet. I think she took a pot shot at the minister by having a go at her for kind of reading that one book and setting forth on an education journey based on that. And I guess Ginny's point is that all of that knowledge-rich stuff has gone too far, and that it's going to create an opportunity for cost for kids around critical thinking and participating and contributing.
Yep.
What's your sense of that? Is she on the money?
I think she's on the money that we need to rebalance, that we do need to maybe pull back the absolute focus on knowledge rich. We also need to have that discussion about whose knowledge we're representing when we talk about a knowledge rich curriculum. I do think she could have been clearer in terms of saying what the what the better balance looks like in terms of a return to, we all we're used to the front end of the curriculum in 2007, the focus on the competencies and the skills, as well as the learning outcomes, which represents the knowledge and the concepts that we teach through our specialist subjects. So I think she's on the money with saying that we need to wind it back. I would have loved to heard a little bit more about focus on competencies and skills and those future ready parts of the curriculum. But yeah, I think she's pretty much on the money in that one.
How do you think? How do you think they're going to get on finding that balance? Because I hear really strongly from the sector that they just don't want to kind of pendulum swing back to what it
Yeah.
was. Do you think it's going to be a relatively simple job and kind of correcting course without just taking us back?
I mean, I would like to think it was, because I think there is a great middle ground that we seem to be missing. Like, I think I could see the shortcomings in our 2007 curriculum in terms of the lack of detailed curriculum structure and threshold concepts and skills, and a bit more of a canon or a body of knowledge that we might refer to, but that needs to be ARTIA centric,
Yeah.
and co-designed. I hope we can. I mean, if she did say a couple of things that rattled people around wanting to maintain maths and English, which suggested that maybe they're not willing to even recenter as much as we might think they need to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we should. I know there's fear of looking like you're going to stop everything and start again, but I think you can take what's being rolled out with the English and maths curriculum, and you can gently recenter it, and you can rebalance it without throwing it out. Like, no one's saying start from scratch with the resources, and all of those sort of things. I think they could have gone a little bit further in that messaging.
Yeah, and I think they've kind of signalled that first and foremost they're going to be pragmatic coming in,
Yeah,
which I think is probably right in terms of kind of where the sector is as a whole.
yeah,
Um, it definitely won't be everybody's cup of tea who are kind of looking at how far we've kind of shifted from that 2023 refresh and
yeah.
would prefer a much more explicit commitment to going back to that as the kind of
Yeah,
central thing.
and interesting to hear some very solid, sort of probably traditional Labor supporter voices actually really upset that there was such acceptance of the English and maths curriculum. So I think Ginny and I think the Labor team need to be careful at thinking that there isn't an appetite for correcting that, and doing some work in that space as well.
Yeah.
Like, we all review what we teach and learn year on year. No one wants to throw everything out and start from scratch again, but I think we can cope with reviews, and particularly when we feel like we're involved in it. I think if we could get back to a place where we were confident that our subject associations were at the center, like, historically, we've completely just assumed, and we have seen subject associations lead the review and rewrite of standards, curriculum documents, and so on and so forth. It's a real anomaly at the moment that they're not so. I mean, it's a little bit better in phase 5 writing. That seems to have gone back a bit more to those experts, but up to phase 4, they really did sideline a lot of our local subject experts. And I think letting them back in to review and refine would be a really good commitment to make.
Yeah, and I think politically though, saying that they're going to be pragmatic and where things seem to be working, they're going to kind of carry
And yet
on.
they can still
Like,
do that. Yeah.
I mean, it's a they're politicians. I mean, they are looking for that kind of pragmatic spot. The signal I really liked in there was that kind of explicit call to action around needing to use experts from Aotearoa, and you've picked up
Yeah.
on the subject associations. And so I wonder if all of the stuff that's not gazetted outside of English and Maths, they might do a bit of a stock take there.
Yeah.
And what I like about that approach, and she didn't say that, but it creates space for us to kind of move away from this kind of boom and bust cycle of curriculum, where
Yeah.
actually maybe we can be a little bit more iterative and change everything over a period of time rather than kind of digging into to everything all at the same time.
Yeah, and I do wonder if there's something to be said for just removal of the mandate language. It's been, we've not seen that before. Like, absolutely, you need a clear curriculum that there's an expectation to cover, but this use of mandate in the system reform bill and them, of mandated teaching and learning programs. And if you look now at the new refreshed teaching standards, they talk about having to teach the mandated, and I think you could actually create space for people recontextualizing and relocalizing the curriculum simply by removing that language about mandates as well.
Yeah, and with that kind of mandated PLD,
Mm,
I mean, what an absolute waste of money to force a school into PLD that doesn't reflect where they're up to on the journey with their teachers.
yeah,
It is just an absolute waste of money and tick boxing exercise where schools are putting small groups of teachers into these kind of PLD programs so they can tick the box, and then at
yeah,
school just crack on with the
yeah,
stuff that they know their teachers need.
yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
this next one here around NCA, Labor will end uncertainty. Any reforms will be introduced gradually year by year so schools can plan ahead.
Yeah,
What did you take away from that? Because I know you've been really hot around the reforming of NCA
yeah, yeah.
over the ditching of it.
I think it wouldn't have done any harm to say that we will commit to, strengthening like actually, because I think we're doing our young people that have been through the system for the last, 24 years, 23 years, however, I can't even remember when NCA got introduced. I should know, I was there when it happened. Like we've had sort of 22, 23 years of NCA to suggest that their qualification is redundant is so insulting. Hello, they make up every young professional that is now up to the age of around, over 40. That so it's ridiculous to say that that was a redundant qualification. And so I think a recommitment to strengthening and actually, making sure that we ensure it is a robust, world-class qualification would go a long way. Because I don't actually believe there's an appetite. I think there's a small group of people that want to get rid of NCA, that want to have the equivalent of, Cambridge or similar that they can, get for free. And there is a small group of school leaders and schools that want a system that produces winners and losers, because that's how you ensure you have an elite qualification, is by showing that there are people that are losing in the system. But I think the vast majority of educators, the vast majority of school leaders, and in fact, if parents understood what was to come, the vast majority of parents and voters don't want a system where the young people are going to miss out on a qualification and it's going to do harm. And
Those
there's
schools,
very real evidence that what is being proposed is going to do harm for our most at risk neurodiverse learners. We've had papers that talk about the impact that it may have on Māori and Pacifica learners and ESOL learners and the like.
those schools you mentioned wouldn't be geographically located in one part of the country, would they?
I can't say,
Look,
Liam. Possibly
the
so.
last part of Jenny's piece, which I thought was an absolute home run because we kind of bang on about it all the time, was just the need to kind of depoliticize education.
Yeah,
Without actually saying it, I hope she's really referencing some of the really nasty stuff coming through that sector reform bill.
yeah,
And just more generally, having a kind of minister of education that don't believe it's kind of their job to go and kind of write curriculum documents themselves. Is that hallelujah?
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I think I think the people that were going hurrah when they read the article or if they read her Substack, were holding on to her commitment to satirity and that commitment to trying to depoliticize education. And we could, as you say, it is absolutely possible, making, some cross-party agreement and a plan that extends beyond an election cycle. And actually maybe, as frustrated as we have been that Labor hasn't made education an election policy, maybe that's the first step to depoliticising education. Actually, maybe in the longer term, we should actually be saying, no, education shouldn't be an election issue because it's something that sits outside the election cycle. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Look, I think it is really good at the end of the day that that actually we've kind of got some kind of stronger narratives coming through from different parties, so that kind of
Yeah,
people can
yeah,
really kind
and
of feel
shout
they
out
can
to
see the
Lawrence
difference.
from the Green Party, because his recent reels have been bang on in terms of unpacking policy, unpacking what's going on behind the scenes. So, irregardless of your party flavour, I recommend going and having a listen to Lawrence's reels on Instagram, because they are really, really informative as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, so just in wrapping up, just wanted to give a plug because a couple of days ago we launched our budget survey.
Yes.
What we're really keen to do is to have people fill that out that are connected to education. Because in the lead up to the budget, we want to kind of highlight the narratives coming out around what people are kind of wanting to see. There's a couple of what I think are cool questions around where do people think money should be reprioritised from within
Yeah.
education. Interested in seeing kind of where people think that we're kind of overspending and where that should be going. I suspect we're still going to be hearing lots around learning support. I think that's still the kind of lived reality for most schools. But yeah, that survey's available on our Facebook page,
Yeah.
on our Substack, and we're really wanting volume. And so if we could have people share that across their networks
Yeah,
before the
absolutely.
15th of
More the
May.
merrier. The more voice we can gather, and we're looking explicitly from the voice of educators. So we're interested in people that are in the sector and their insights, and then people can look forward to the absolutely insightful analysis that we're going to deliver on the night of the budget announcement as well. So one of
Yeah.
the things we're hoping to do is gather people together from each parts of the sector, so we can have a bit of a robust discussion about what lands on the 28th of May and this year's budget announcement for Education 2026. So, yeah, it'll be fantastic if we could have that discussion with really clear priorities that we know come from our friends from within the sector. So please
Yeah.
do fill it in, share it with mates. We'd really appreciate
Um,
it.
this is very operational, but I would really like it if Substack allowed you to do uh, Substack lives with more than three voices,
Oh
because
no, we're going to have to sub in and out. We're going to have to.
yeah, that's right. Or we might have to go onto like Facebook Live, or
Yeah. Oh my
um,
goodness.
gosh, we're going to have to
Can
maybe.
we get our fancy microphones by then? We're going to level up, hey, and have fancy microphones by then, surely.
Well, eventually, all of this advert bombarding I've got with podcasting microphones, I think I'm just going to have to kind of live in and do it.
Just give in, go with it. So yeah, thanks once again to everyone who has joined us this week. It's been really lovely to hear anecdotal sort of feedback from friends and colleagues saying that they're enjoying us chatting away. We were a bit worried that we were just talking to each other, but it turns out that a few of you actually listen to this as well. So a big thank you to those of you who are tuning in as well, and look forward to having a chat again with you all next week.
Thanks, Claire. Ka kite.